What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Hawks Film Room podcast hosted by David Lee, aka D Lee for three. Didn't exactly do a film breakdown immediately following the Hawks loss against Miami, mainly because I thought that there were things beyond what happened on the film that led to that loss. And we'll talk about that a little bit later in the podcast. This episode is going to have three distinct parts. Okay, the first thing, we're going to talk about some big Hawks news with Landry Fields and then some tiebreakers in the draft. We're going to talk the Miami Heat game for a little bit. And then we're going to talk, I'm going to bring on my guy, Nick, and we're going to talk some award potentials. We're going to go back and forth, like a cross examination in terms of DPOY and Rookie of the Year, who we think will win, and all that good stuff. But yeah, so starting with the Landry Fields news. Landry Fields was fired yesterday, relieved of his duties as GM of the Atlanta Hawks. Now, he did give a press conference immediately following the play-in loss, which I think Brad Rowland pointed this out. And by the way, if you haven't listened to Brad's Locked On Hawks podcast episode about this particular situation, he's the best source for all of this. And a lot of what I'm going to be saying is reiterating what he's saying, and also some of the things that I heard immediately after the firing. Okay, so Landry Fields was fired. Immediately, my first thoughts were like, wow, like, because the Hawks, to me, I've been saying this all season. I've been saying this across every platform. The Hawks had finally found direction, right? They had a unified visions for how they were going to build out this roster. They were building with versatility, length, whatever it may be. They're getting Trey Moore off the ball. They're putting guys in the Quinn system that fit a little bit better. And there was never really a point in Landry's decision making where I was like, that was a disastrous trade, right? He's not responsible for the DeJounte Murray deal. That was before he actually was the acting head of basketball ops. Uh, that deal has been chronicled that Travis Schlenk was not signed off on that, and then ownership sort of pushed that through. And then, of course, Trae Young co-signed that deal as well. So I don't give him any sort of blame for that. Landry did make a lot of deals as GM for the Hawks, as most GMs do. I put together like a whole timeline, right? So he was promoted on 2022 to general manager, but that's when um, it's kind of like, and I think Brad touched on this as well, but the president of basketball ops and GM sometimes have different varying levels of power. So at the time that Landry was GM with Schlenk still in the organization, Travis was the lead executive. So yeah, with that caveat in mind, Travis didn't step down until the December of that following year. Looking at the timeline, the AJ Griffin draft pick at 16th, I don't really think it's on him that he decided to quit basketball, but you did have Tari Eason, who was picked directly after him, so I can understand some frustration from Hawks fans there. There was always going to be some money-saving moves that was going to be mandated from ownership. Shout out Tony Ressler. So there are multiple moves where they were trading Jock Lando to the Suns for cash, or some of the two-way deals, or trading for Vit Krejci, stuff that actually ended up being pretty good for the Hawks. But under Landry, they ended up signing DeAndre Hunter to the 4-year, $95 million extension, which I remember at the time felt like an overpay. I felt like it was an overpay for sure. I think that type of deal is what allowed them to trade him, similar to what they ended up signing DeJounte Murray to a little bit later on. I think one thing that really defined Landry's tenure, though, as I'm reading through this transaction list, he did not value second-round picks at all. He gave up Kevin Knox in 4 seconds to Portland, and then 2 seconds to Golden State for Saddiq Bey as part of a 4-team trade. I think they ended up getting 1 second back. So basically, they gave up 5 seconds for Saddiq Bey, who played 1 season for us. Unfortunately, towards ACL, but while he played for us, he was the worst relative corner three-point shooter in the league and one of the worst of all time. They also did multiple money-saving trades, so they sent Justin Holiday, Frank Kaminsky, and 2 OKC second-round picks to Houston for Garrison Matthews and Bruno Fernando. A lot of that was money-related, but Nate McMillan gets fired the 21st of February 2023. Quinn Snyder signs a 5-year contract. Then you get the Bogdan Bogdanovic extension. Again, I think if both him and DeAndre Hunter are on long-term deals, it will be harder for them to move. 2023 offseason, they get Kobe Buffkin 15th, Seth Lundy at 46th, and then they trade for Mohamed Gay. I was a big fan of this particular draft class. Seth Lundy's no longer with the team. Kobe Buffkin hasn't been an impactful player because he's been hurt. But I think process-wise, I don't have any complaints about this. Also, historically, the Hawks have been really bad in the second round. So anytime the Hawks can get some sort of value on second-round picks, I'm going to give them a lot of credit for that. And I think Landry got a lot of value out of those particular picks. At least for Mohamed Gay, at least like getting a rotation player is really, really important. Let's see. The other thing is the John Collins deals and the Ty Washington stuff. I remember being really excited that they got Ty and Usman. I thought they could be cheap rotational players. They ended up not retaining them. and they were packaged after they got John. So they took John Collins, turned him into Rudy Gay in a second. That was bad asset management from the jump. I've said this before, but John Collins, DeAndre Hunter, and Clint Capella was the worst passing front court of all time, and none of them could create for themselves. Well, DeAndre could create for himself, but he couldn't create for anyone else. Like, you have to have front court playmaking. You have to be more versatile. And when they brought in a ball-stopping guard and DeJounte Murray, you needed guys who could keep the ball moving when he was off the floor, or, like, make those swing passes. And they didn't have it. So keeping John Collins, and I understand, like, from the Hawks' perspective, like, they wanted to see how it looked. Unfortunately, I think they tanked his value, and he had his worst three-point shooting season of his career, and he messed up his finger. So tough circumstances, but, in retrospect, it would have been nice to get off John Collins earlier. So that was one of many instances where the Hawks have held on to someone a little bit longer than they needed. Then they got DeJounte Murray on the 4-year, $120 million contract. I think all the contract negotiations were pretty good. They were all pretty favorable for the Hawks, and that ended up, again, allowing the Hawks to trade him at what seemed like a steal of a contract. And it was for the price we paid for him and his raw production, but it also was just cheap enough to convince New Orleans to trade for him. So that was great. Then you have Ty, Rudy, and Usman Garuba in a second trade to OKC for Patty Mills. Not a great move, but, none of those guys are really needle movers. I thought the margin moves were not great during the 2023 season and the offseason. Like, you get Wesley Matthews. They waived Vit Krejci, and then but they brought him back on a two-way, so that was good. And then Trent Forrest was signed on a two-way. The Onyeka Okongwu extension came at this time period as well, so a 4-year, $62 million contract extension, which was really good. Trent Forrest signs a rest of season contract. Then we get the 2024 offseason, okay? And this is when the current GM, who was just promoted, who was the former assistant GM, Onsi Saleh, he was hired in April, okay? From the point that Saleh joined the team, you have Risacher drafted first overall. You have AJ Griffin traded in a 3-team trade for Houston, swap picks to Miami. You get Nikola Jurisic, 44th. They exercised Garrison Matthews' team option, and then they pulled off the DeJounte Murray trade, which probably saved the franchise. You get Dyson Daniels, Cody Zeller sign and trade, Larry Nance, EJ Liddell, and 2 first-round picks. Now, I think that's a great return. What Tyler Jones pointed out is that Cody Zeller was extraneous salary, so they didn't need to take that on, and they ended up having to give up a second to get off of Cody Zeller's money, and he never reported to the Hawks. So not really sure what that was about. Then you have Seth Lundy signing a two-way. Vit Krejci signs a 4-year, $10 million contract, which is great. Keenan Wallace two-way. They trade away Liddell to the Suns for David Roddy, which I'll never understand, but I remember interviewing Landry at Media Day, and he was a big fan, so maybe that's why. Bruno gets waived. Don Barlow signs a two-way contract. I thought all the margin moves in this offseason and throughout the season have been good. Jalen Johnson, 5-year, $150 million contract extension. Great work. Then you get to the deadline. DeAndre Hunter traded to the Cavs for Niang, Karis LeVert, 3 second-round picks, and 2 first-round pick swaps that probably won't convey. They're kind of fake swaps. Now, DeAndre Hunter for Niang and LeVert, I have no complaints about it. I understand why some Hawks fans are upset. Bogdan Bogdanovic and 3 second-round picks traded to the Clippers for Terrence Mann and Bones Highland. A little bit rougher of a trade at this point, but if you look at what Bogey has done for the Clippers, it's been nothing. So, yes, these guys are more playoff proof, and possibly the Hawks shot making would be a lot better in these particular games against Orlando, where they had a career low or a season low in 3-pointers made, and also shot making in Miami sort of was sporadic, especially with like Risacher, et cetera. But I'm not hung up on that deal. I think the biggest thing is the long-term money from Terrence Mann, and I have to admit I was a little bit wrong about him after what he did in the Miami game. They waived Bones Highland, who they had got in return for Bogdan Bogdanovic, and then they signed Jacob Toppin to a two-way, and then Don Barlow signs a 2-year, $2.76 million rest of season contract. So from what I've heard, Brad confirmed this as well, there's varying degrees of power that executives have in the front office, right? Now, the head honcho is almost always the owner, and it really just depends how much the owner is involved in basketball-related decisions. Unfortunately, Tony is very involved in basketball-related decisions, particularly when it comes to money. Like, he does not like spending money. I think we all know that. Everything I've been told is that Landry did not have the amount of autonomy or the amount of decision-making power that a traditional executive would have. Some of the examples that Brad had in his show were guys like Sam Presti or Daryl Morey in Philadelphia. Those guys have like the owner's blessing. Do whatever it takes, make us great, right? The implication of the things I've heard is that Landry had to get a lot more approval for the things he was doing. There was also certain moves that were attributed to him versus Saleh. I don't really know which ones in particular outside of a few, and I can't say it in strong enough confidence to make that statement, but I don't think there was a fragmentation within the organization at all. I think it was all pretty collaborative from everything I've heard. It's just more so the Hawks, in my opinion, brought in Saleh. They valued him very highly. They've been trying to poach Golden State Warriors executives for a very, very long time. Okay. Travis Schlenk was one of the first guys they tried to pull. Now Saleh, he does not actually have the type of like I'm trying to pull up the thread that I just read from one of my Twitter mutuals. He put out a good thread about let me see. Yeah, about like the newly promoted general manager. He doesn't have a ton of like basketball experience, but he is a lawyer from Tulane. He studies sports law, and this is like a pretty reputable program. Like they've produced front office talent. They also have a mock that basically is a negotiation competition, right? So it's typically for like trade or contract negotiations, it's simulations. And then a lot of course, there's a lot of visibility from NBA executives and front offices. They try and scout who's going to be the next Sam Presti, who's going to be the next Daryl Morey, et cetera. I keep saying et cetera. I listened to too much Brad today. But so he was brought in April 2024. His previous experience, 2018, he was part of the San Antonio Spurs, started as an intern, worked his way all the way up to be director of strategy and process. He then joined the Golden State Warriors, and he was the vice president of basketball strategy. The Hawks then brought him in as assistant GM. So again, the deal since Saleh has been assistant GM. You have the DeJounte trade that brings in Dyson Daniels, Jalen Johnson's extensions, DeAndre Hunter being traded for Levert and Niang, and then Bogdanovich for Terrence Mann and Bones Highland. So I think he's a very respected basketball mind. Like there's a lot of respect for him across the league. And for people who are like familiar with law, like that particular type of competition is very reputable, very prestigious. And I think that a lot of this is less about, oh, Landry isn't a guy versus we think Saleh gives us the same sort of approach or the same sort of results, right? And I think the biggest thing for the Hawks, if they're going to be looking for a new president of basketball operations, they have to remain aligned with what the Hawks franchise has, what they have gotten to at this point, right? We've been cursed by ownership since Atlanta Spirit, right? So that's nothing new, but to me, it felt like this was for the first time in a long time that the front office is all on one page. And it's important to me, and I really do hope that I'm sure they're going to keep this in mind regardless, but when you're building something, and of course the outside perception is like, oh, the Hawks are tearing it all down, like they kicked their leader out, whatever. I don't think this is going to be a super disruptive move if Saleh is really attributed for some of these moves, and what the Hawks have done since he joined the team versus Landry's tenure prior to Saleh joining is what gives me a lot of hope. And then listening to Kyle Korver talk about, I think I mentioned this on a previous spot, but listening to Kyle Korver talk about his process for building a team and how he's trying to replicate the sort of camaraderie and the innate respect and the respect for the game, but also respect for one another that 2015 Hawks team had. That makes me feel pretty good about that. Now, they've mentioned Elton Brand as someone that the Hawks are looking for in basketball ops. He has worked as he worked in the Sixers organization. He was the lead executive until Daryl Morey became the guy over there. We have had guys in the past be president of basketball ops and coach. That was, but Budenholzer was that. Quinn Snyder is on the record saying he doesn't have a ton of control, but I think, at least, I'm not reporting that, I think he does have input on players and whether they draft or who they go to acquire. And I think that makes sense. Like, you want to get guys for his system. I don't think they're going to bring in Quinn as president of basketball ops. Kyle Korver maybe could step up to be president of basketball ops as well. But I think that whoever they bring in needs to be aligned with them, because Chris Haynes put out a video saying that Trae Young is bought in, whatever. That basically he's down with the process and that he heard good things about Trae wanting to stay around. And I don't know, like we'll have to see what the stories come out like, because Korver is still there. And you still have that vacancy at president of basketball operations. If the Hawks, if they're looking for someone, I'd be happy to step up. I think but I think they'll be thorough with it. They hired a sports consultancy agency or something like that to try and figure out the best fit. I don't know if Elton Brand would be my pick. I would probably want to look at organizations like OKC. I'd want to look at Houston. I'd like these teams that are building with versatility, length, and athleticism in mind. Minnesota. Those would probably be the franchises I would look at to see if I could bring in some talent personally. We'll see what they do. And then the other thing before we get to the Miami Heat stuff, the Hawks won the tiebreaker today. Well, the Kings won it, but it's our pick. So the way the tiebreaker works is the Hawks and the Kings finished with the same record. So there was a coin flip to say, okay, who gets the 13th versus the 14th pick? They won the 13th pick, which means that Sacramento has like a 4% chance or a 3.8% chance to finish in the top four. If they finish in the top four, they get the pick. They have no chance to finish from 5 to 12. And then they could finish, I think, 13 with like a 92% chance, and then 14 with like a 3% chance. And then we're stuck at 14. And then we have like a tiny chance to like jump to the lottery, which would be for the Spurs, right? That's great because the Hawks have like a 96 to 97% chance of that pick conveying. And you'll know pretty quickly on the lottery, like basically, if the Kings pick does not get revealed at 13 or 14, it has jumped to top four. So prayers for the draft lottery. The other great thing, the Lakers pick, which could have been as bad as low as 25, they won a four-way tiebreaker. So Indiana, Denver, and the Clippers, I think, all finished with the same record. And so it was, and the Lakers as well. The Lakers got the 22nd pick. So they won that coin flip, which means the Hawks will be picking at 22nd guaranteed and either 13 or 14, but most likely 13 with the Kings pick. So that gives the Hawks a bit of a reprieve. Unfortunately, I do think the perception of the Hawks, like externally from people who aren't as dialed in, is like, oh, they're blowing it up, trade. I would definitely say I'm going to put the brakes on that. I don't think that's what's going to happen. I don't think this organization is in a tumultuous like upset. I think Brad had said that people were caught off guard, but he had heard like weeks prior that there were rumblings about this. I saw people like show me that like that we had been talking about this. So it looks like the Hawks are, as long as Ressler is owning the team, I'm going to be skeptical that he's going to be able to find someone or he's going to make the right decisions outside of his motivations to make money, if that makes sense. So we'll see what the basketball related impact is. But as long as they try and keep this front office intact, if they keep Saleh empowered, if they keep Kyle Korver empowered, then I think the Hawks would be in a good situation going forward. But yeah, we'll transition to the next part of the podcast where we'll talk about the Miami Heat. And then after that, we'll talk some awards. Welcome back to the podcast. We're going to switch around the segments. So this segment is going to be looking at the Hawks players who are under contention for some awards. We've got Dyson Daniels for most improved. He's a finalist. You've got Zachary Risacher as a finalist for Rookie of the Year. And Dyson is also a finalist for Defensive Player of the Year. And I figured, it's not enough to just have my own opinion for this. I want to talk it through like my process and then, have a little bit of contentious, debate with my guy, Nick. Nick was on in the podcast, a little bit earlier in the season, breaking down the Celtics. So I brought him back on because we're going to talk through our picks for the award, how we define each award. And yeah, man, how you feeling today, Nick?
I'm great, man. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm looking forward to talking through these awards. So we're going to go ahead and start with most improved. If there was an award that I had to say the Hawks players are most likely to get, it'd have to be most improved. Dyson's been pretty, at least in my opinion, objectively the most improved player in the NBA, at least by my definition. But I'm curious because people have different definitions. And I know that we're aligned on our pick for Dyson. Like, how do you define most improved? And yeah, so we'll start there and then we'll talk about like why we think it's Dyson.
I know there's a lot of like change that happened. So it's like, is it just opportunity, which Dyson did have? He averaged 10 more minutes this year. But I love players who they have like a lot of time, but they shoot like I think in New Orleans he shot 42% last year or 44%, and then this year he got like a lot of time and he shot about 49%. So I love guys who can switch places, get some more time, and still shoot great. I think Dyson did a lot of that. A lot of the stuff that he did in New Orleans was just like he was playing out of his, especially on the offensive side. They had him like shooting a lot of threes, which he's not a great shooter. But yeah, I just think there's somebody that obviously you can tell that he is in the he's in the he's in the gym a whole lot, and I like how he was able to switch from playing with a with a a a a well, Sion didn't really play that much last year, but Brandon, and then he came to play with Trey Young, which is like a complete change because Trey controls a lot of the shit on, well, not a lot, damn near near everything. Trey was the leader in points responsible for this year, right?
I think Jokic
Like
ended up finishing higher, but
okay.
him and Jokic were the only people who averaged 50 plus. And it's like Trey's third or fourth season doing so. So I think the situation that like Dyson came into was, it's more about it's more of course opportunity and the usage and all that, but he grew so much as a player. Like I was watching his film, and I've loved Dyson for a long time, so I've kept tabs on him over the last couple of years. The dude was scared to dribble. He was scared to shoot. He was scared to make decisions in the open floor. And it was like he just lacked the confidence in himself as an offensive player. Not that he lacked the skill, if that makes sense. And I think to your point, right, he wasn't necessarily given the responsibility in New Orleans to continue to grow and explore what he could do with the ball in his hands. And pre-draft, I was watching like one of his, he did like a film breakdown that ESPN used to do with the rookie class. And he was saying, you know, I see myself as a 1 or a 2. I feel like I can do both. I can be on the ball. I can be off the ball. And the defense was always going to get him on the floor. Like Atlanta was always going to play him. He could have been a complete negative offensively. We probably would have still played him 30 minutes a night because that's what we need. And that's how good he is defensively. But I think it's not only did he take on a bigger role, but like he has one of the biggest workloads in the NBA. Like matchup difficulty, he has the third highest all time, the highest this season. He's guarded the most drives in the NBA. He guarded the second or either the first or second most ISOs. He allowed the second least amount of points in ISO points per possession, and he's also running the Hawks offense when Trey's off the floor. And he's not just a stationary guy. Like he's constantly cutting, screening, slipping, crashing the glass, pushing the pace. Like his conditioning is what's really remarkable to me as well, because it's not easy to just score. Like you can scale up your workload. A lot of people become more inefficient when that happens too. And you know, he's had more usage, he's had more responsibility. This particular season, man, like he's at he finished with 14 points per game, was averaging 10 assist points created per game, 1.6 rim assists, which is 86 percentile. We know the defense is special, so he's at like 5.8 deflections, which was 100% percentile. And when you look at the actual like his numbers in terms of like his true shooting, this was his best shooting relative to league average. So he was, you know, still a little bit below league average, -3. But when you have a career high in efficiency on a career high in shot usage, minutes, defensive load, regular minutes played, offensive responsibility, like that's not normal. No. And you also mentioned too, like he took more threes this season than he has in his career. So, or actually not on a possession basis, but like on total and per game. But it was actually a smaller percentage of his shot diet. So
I got the same thing, bro.
Yeah. So it's 24% of his shots were threes. And the previous year is 40 and 38%. So like, again, like they put him in positions to actually like succeed. They gave him the types of play types that he was best at. He ended up finishing a little bit above league average in his own creation play types. So those types of play types, I mean, most people aren't going to actually be more efficient. They're like, you're not going to be on like standard league efficiency on the tough shot diet, but he was above league average there. And it's really just a shooting where he was below league average. And, you know, like he's still growing there. So to me, I think it's a no-brainer. When you look at his progression and like from the last season, I want to say he had the 5th highest jump or the 4th highest jump in points per game. Like the only players who scored more on like a per possession basis was Malik Beasley, Norman Powell, Quentin Grimes, Harden, and then like some guys who were like low minute guys like Boucher and Sensa Ball. But when you look at like with the guys who played at least like 15 or 20 minutes a game, I mean, it's really him, Harden, Malik Beasley, and Norman Powell. And Norman Powell, as much as he increased his production, we're seeing how he hasn't grown as a player in the playoffs. Like with the court mapping or the decision making, or he hasn't necessarily taken that step as like a secondary ball handler. He just had a very, very prolific scoring season, which they needed from him. Like, don't get me wrong, but I don't think he improved to nearly the same amount. And then, of course, there's that whole debate about what most improved means. And to my opinion, if you come in, it's not about coming into the league with expectations. Like, if they wanted to break out the awards, and you had a breakout player of the year, and then you had a most improved, I think that would make sense to me, right? Like, so you have a player who, like Ty Jerome is a breakout player, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Even if he has shown flashes, like that's a breakout player of the year. But then Dyson is most improved because he had at least a semblance of a role. We saw him 20 minutes a night in New Orleans, and he's a completely different player. And so I think that's where, like, I don't think Cade is the type of guy who should get the most improved. I'm not
I hate
necessarily,
that shit.
yeah, like I think that's ridiculous. Like when John Morant got out, I thought it was ridiculous. So that's where I stand on it. Like, do you think like your definition of most improved is more so like, okay, who's made the biggest skill jump? Because I think I will say the whole thing about that thing that I think is interesting, it's harder to go from like sub all-star to all NBA than it is to go from rotation player to solid starter.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Like, would you agree with that?
Yeah.
So that's why I
Yeah.
feel like I can at least understand the argument for Cade, because it's like, okay, he went from someone who fringe all-star to like, this is an all NBA player. So I
Yeah.
can understand that. But I think in general, like most improved shouldn't be this guy came into the league as number one pick. I like we understood what he could be. You know what I mean?
Right.
But like, where are you on that?
Yeah. I think like some of it is expectations, because I'm like, okay, I know what Kate is supposed to be. So if he turns out to this, I'm not like, oh my God, this
Yeah,
kid
no
gonna
one's
have made.
surprised. No
No,
one's
it's no
surprised
surprise
about
to
what
me.
he's doing right now.
Yeah,
The
I'm
only
not
thing that
surprised.
surprised me is the shooting, if I'm gonna be honest. But everything
Yeah.
else, But yeah, not to
Yeah.
cut you off.
No, you good, you good. So in terms of Dyson, right? So just for some raw stats, he 22 minutes a night last season, 6 points. He jumped up to 14 this year, 4 rebounds. He jumped up to 6, 3 assists last year. He jumped up to 4.5, and the 3 steals part is just insane. But yeah, so we were talking about his like shot, like the Pelicans just had him playing on offense like he was like Cal Corver or some shit, and he's just not a guy that's there yet. So 26% of his shots last year were above the break threes. He shot 27% on those. 17% of his shots last year were corner threes. He shot cool on those at a 38%. And 24% of his attempts were in the paint last season of 48%. This year on the Hawks, 19% of his shots were above the break threes. He shot 31% on those. 6% of his shots were corner threes. And he shot 44% on those. And in the paint, it jumped up to 37%, and he shot 46%. So if a guy can't shoot, like, why the fuck do you have him out there? Just that's not him. So his confidence, his skill, all of that grew. And then you have with him with Trae Young, and then you have him in positions on the offensive side where he can be himself. I don't think with the Pelicans he was himself, because they had him taking all those threes and shit. And he gets to the rim. He's 6'7" with long arms. I think this with the Hawks is just perfect for him. And you talked about the true shooting a little bit, 54.5% true shooting this year. And yeah, I just think, and then the defense. I haven't even talked about the defense, like deflections, steals, the disruption. Like, he is truly a generational talent within that type of within that type of shit. And like the way he defend, like he has some clutch. Like I don't know if at the beginning of the season I was thinking of like clutch player of the year going to like a defensive guy, because of what he had, a lot of like clutch stops and clutch steals toward the beginning, but it kind of died down a little bit. But like he had times where it's like, okay, this guy is gonna try to score, and he was stopping them at the end of the game, and it was insane. So he is pretty clear to me who this award is going to, with respect to Zubac. And my third was Christian 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 Brown. I didn't really consider Norm because I know who he is, and he's the
Mm,
exact same player. He haven't had a great season, but I didn't think he his handle got. I didn't think he improved
mhm.
as a player. I just think that he had a great season. Like if he was like start Kyrie and then that's what I'm saying, that's something else. But I feel like Dyson, his confidence up tremendously, his
Yeah,
skill upped. He and the Hawks were just a perfect situation for him this
yeah.
season.
And to your point about the clutch win probability, when I looked at the time, this was like April 10th, he was leading the NBA like by far in clutch win probability added based off steals. So this is something that's
Mm,
tracked by Unpredictable. Um, at the time, he was looking at 5.64. Like I know that sounds like a arbitrary number, but it's basically like how much win probability are you adding by getting steals? And it was the third highest win probability added in the clutch since 1996. I think
mm.
only CP3 and AI had a bigger impact on in the clutch based off that. And the guys he joined were like CP3, AI, Rondo, Kidd, Gary Payton, Mookie Blaylock, and Doug Christie. So like those are all guys who are like some of the best on-ball defenders, most disruptive defenders ever. And I think it's also an attribute. It speaks to his defensive and not just his defensive IQ, but his overall basketball feel. Like you don't become this good
Oh,
at taking the ball away without having a great understanding of where people are on, like where people are going to be, when to reach, whatever it may be. And I think this was the first year you saw his understanding of the game translate offensively, and it's because they gave him and they trusted him to be on the ball. Um, Years prior, he only ran 50. He combined for 90 pick and roll ball handler possessions in his 2 years in New Orleans. This year, he ran 175. He was above league average in efficiency and possessions per game. He ran more handoffs than he ever did in the 2 years in New Orleans, and he was like just slightly below league average. And then the ISO stuff too, like he wasn't the best ISO scorer in the league, but he didn't even
mm,
qualify in his 2024 season. So I don't think anyone stepped up their play in a new role while maintaining their most intrinsic attributes. Like if Norman Powell was asked to run the offense, he wouldn't be able to do it. If Zubac, and I think Zubac also deserves a ton of credit. Like I think like to your point, I think he'd probably be two for me too. But I think a lot of what Zubac is doing, it wasn't like it felt like Dyson Daniels morphed into a different player. It didn't
yeah,
feel like Zubac necessarily. He became much more efficient. I thought the passing is what's been the biggest thing for me when I watch Zubac. Like the passing, and you're seeing it in the playoff series against Denver, like his short roll passing, the way he's diagnosing where he needs to be. Like this is by far his best season ever passing the ball. Like he's averaging the highest assist points per 100 potential assists. Does barely turns the ball over, whatever he may be, and his efficiency and he's at a career high shot usage, and he's also like really good efficiency. So if I think I would understand people voting Zubac, but I think Dyson's the winner, and he's my expectation to win as well. I haven't looked at the votes. I have to double check them because I was actually looking at them a little bit earlier. What do you think? Do you think he has a chance to actually win this one, or what do you think?
yeah, just like you, I haven't really checked the
Mhm.
actual vote and stuff yet, but I think he should win it. And I think he will win it, but I think Zubac, well, actually, I don't know because with the K shit, like he's the
That could,
K,
yeah.
like he's
I
he's
think
the
he's
biggest
the favorite, right?
name.
Or
So
well, let me look at who's the favorite right now. I think it closed with Dyson as the favorite. Um,
I just hope the NBA doesn't do that Josh shit that they did like 2 years ago. Like nigga, he was the second overall pick, and he was supposed to be first. It was just that Zion was in the draft, so it's like he was supposed to be this, but
yeah. So
yeah,
I just checked. So right now, Dyson Daniels is leading by 10 points over Zubac, who has 90 total points, and Brown has 45 points. Dyson has 16 first play votes, and then Zubac has 15. So I think it'll be pretty close because
yeah.
yeah, this is like a independently tracked based on like people's articles or what they tweet out. So we'll see, man.
All right, I'm just glad that K's not there, so that's cool.
Yeah,
But
Kate is fourth. So I think we're seeing a turn from the media. I think like Zubac, Christian Brown, those guys deserve at least a consideration. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
I wouldn't be upset. I would still be upset, but I wouldn't be like, bro, what are we doing if
yeah,
Zubac wins? You know what I mean?
yeah.
So I want to talk rookie of the year with you.
Bet.
I know that we have differing opinions here, so I'll go ahead. I'll state my case. I'll let you state yours, and then we'll do like some cross examination. You feel me? So Zachary Risacher is my pick, and I had someone ask me in my comments, Shaq's NBA. He writes for Strickland. He was like, no bias. Like, who would you take for Rookie of the Year? And I think in years past, I might have went with Stephon Castle, but ultimately, like, I think I've grown, at least in the concept of a team, and like the ability to be efficient and effective within your role means a lot more to me than I really expected. And Risacher is the first or one of the 7 rookies in NBA history to have a 30-game stretch shooting with a 60+ true shooting percentage and shooting a decent volume from 3. Over that 31 game, I think he actually closed the season averaging those numbers, but over this particular 31 game stretch, we're talking about 13 points, 4 rebounds, 49% from the field on 10 field goal attempts, 41% from 3, 4.5 threes, and he shot 75.5% from the free throw line. He also averaged 1.2 rebounds and then 1.1 stocks. And I think that, at least in my opinion, a lot of what Risacher did was a little bit more consequential to the Hawks' success. Like, I don't want to say it's a winning type thing because I'm not going to ding Stephon for not winning within the context of the team that, what I'm saying? Like, that team was not, I think people had different expectations than they would have expected that I really thought they would have coming into the season. Like, I thought that team was not going to be super good. Obviously, when you add the Aaron Fox, and of course, when you have, Victor Wembanyama, like, expectations are going to change. But so when we look at Risacher's, if you cut out, like, hold on, let me get to the exact one. Like, his first 12 games were a disaster. He averaged 11 points. He shot 47% from 2, 24% from 3, and a 62.2 free throw percentage. And he tanked his plus minus crazy. He was a -5 in those minutes. And then for the rest of the season, we're talking about 63 games. Okay. He averaged nearly 13 points per game, shot 58 true shooting percentage, which is about a point and a half above league average, 55% on 2s, 37.8% from 3, about one stock or so per game. And he improved his plus minus over that stretch by almost 4. And I think that's what impressed me, is like the amount of improvement within a season. Like, the farther you go into the season, the better his numbers get. Like, if you go to look at his last 43 games, he's at a 61 true shooting percentage. He's shot 40% from 3. And so that's why I think it's like, it's not normal to see a rookie completely make himself into a rotational player in the middle of the season. Like, the first 12 games, him and Saloon were going band for band for worst French player ever. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was really bad. And I remember we were all so concerned because it's like, the one thing we felt like we could trust him to come in and do is shoot the ball. And that was a mistake from Hawks fans and evaluators in general, because he was streaky overseas, right?
Mm.
And let's also be honest, like, he came to America, and this is the first time he's ever been in this country. He was picking up English. He's away from his family, and it's not a coincidence that, like, he had his best games when his family was in town. So, like, the game against Chicago, his family was in town, and he was super fired up. He had a great game. The game in Brooklyn where he had 30, his family was there, I think. Okay. So it's like, he's still a kid, man. And the same kid ended up leading his class in 30-point games. He had 2 15+ point quarters. I had a 16-point quarter against the Sixers when we played them multiple times. He had 3 quarters with 16+ points. And he had the second most games with 16+ point quarters by a teenage rookie ever. And like, even like his numbers above the break weren't great all season, but on his most efficient stretch, he was shooting 37% on over 80 attempts from above the break, 48% from the corner. He's one of the best corner shooters in the NBA. His mid-range attempts were looking great, nearly 50%, and he shot 62% at the rim. Like, I think, with the context of what type of shots he was taking, I can understand, like, like, just to give the numbers on it, he only took, like, I want to say, like, less than 20%. Like, the vast majority of his shots were like play finishing shots. Okay. So he's, whether it's out of a spot up situation, whatever it may be. If you look at his, he per 75 possessions, he averaged about 21 true shot attempts. He was slightly below league average on those shot attempts. just 1.3 of those were creation. So like we're talking about a percentage like less than 10%. But the majority of his shots came off of shooting possessions, so that's spot ups, handoffs, or off screens, and then cutting, transition, putbacks, and roll man. That was his most dominant play type. So when you compare it to some other rookies in his class, that may not be the same type of creation load or whatever it may be, but he still ran 50 possessions as a pick and roll ball handler, which is more than Dyson ran in his first 2 years. He was one of the more effective transition scorers in the NBA as well. So he was in the 89th percentile in possessions per game, and he was in the 60th percentile in relative points per possession. I think he was a more versatile than I expected. Now the results differed, man. Like some of the off-screen stuff, the turnovers, the dribbles, off the dribble stuff. But at the same time, sometimes things would pop and you'd be like, whoa, I didn't know he could do that. Or I didn't know he could create for himself in those particular ways. His on-ball percentage is only 8%, 29th percentile. Overall, I felt like, at least in my opinion, the defensive playmaking stuff is pretty good. Like for his position, like he's in 80th percentile in blocks. His deflections were a little bit above league average. He contested in the 94th percentile at the rim, so he was constantly in the picture defensively. But when you have even at his size, he's a little skinny, so like the differential stuff isn't great. Like teams kind of shot a little bit better with him defending them, unfortunately. So like they shot 3 percentage points better with him defending them. So I think all that stuff will kind of take care of himself when he gets bigger, stronger, grows into his body. But ultimately, my case for Zach comes down to like he was the most consistently impactful rookie. He was the best shooting rookie in the class. He was the best scoring rookie relative to like efficiency. Although I will acknowledge like his best scoring games came when he was hot. Like if he wasn't hot, then there were some really rough nights. I think that just by the virtue of him being 6'10", he had a lower baseline to be impactful. He just had to kind of be there, get rebounds, space the floor. He definitely had a more reduced role than some of his competition there. But yeah, that's my case. And I'd love to hear your case for your pick.
Yeah, man. This is like, I feel like this award cycle is one of the tougher ones that I've seen in a long time. And there's a lot of stuff that I'm like, okay, you're probably not gonna sway me, but if this guy got it, like I'm not like, you know what I'm saying? I'm not going crazy. And I felt that way about DPOY, MIP slightly, even though I think Dyson should get that stuff. But yeah, so Castle this season averaged about 15 points, 4 rebounds, and 4 assists. And the big thing is that his efficiency, right? He can't shoot yet. But what I liked about Castle this season is that there was a little bit of turmoil, like in terms of like his team and like his role. So you have a guy like Chris Paul who comes in. Like Castle was saying a lot in the pre-draft that I want to be the point guard. You know what I'm saying? Like he wants to play that. And the Spurs drafted him, and I was thinking, okay, how's this going to work with him and Chris Paul? He would most definitely be playing playing a lot of two, which he ended up playing two. And him saying that I was trying to play the one and coming in and playing the two. I think he think he handled that really good. Now again, the shooting, he shot 28% from 3. Hopefully he doesn't shoot this bad ever again. But I was just really impressed about how good he was in the paint. He shot 50% from 2 this season. He shot 62% from in the restricted area this season. And his size does a lot. He has a lot of touch around the rim. And this season he also like Zach this season he finished strong, but that also goes to some of the turmoil with he had Victor injury, of course, which makes things a lot harder. And they traded for Hawks, a guy in his that's gonna be taking that's gonna be trying to score and taking some stuff some away. And he had to kind of switch who he is and how he played. So even though I think that Zach deserves a lot of credit, I think his role was the same the entire year, which is like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I'm a guy that's gonna shoot the ball, I'm a cut, you know what I'm saying? And I think Castle had a lot of roles this with Chris Paul, with um the trade for Fox, with Victor ended up going down. His last 20 games he averaged 18 points, 5 rebounds and 6 assists. Again, only shot 29% from 3. But I think Castle, like I can see, like, if Castle like gets a lot more lot a lot uh more time and more touches, that I can see him like in him like him doing that a lot. So I went Castle. I'm not gonna trip if it goes the other way, because I do like Zach a lot too. But I think
Mm-hmm.
with the role changes during the season, him just uh still uh, being uh being great in terms of that in his first season, which is tough, you know what I'm saying? But he did great in that aspect. And then on the defensive side, uh tenacious. He's tall, he can guard, say, one, two, three. And he's strong, you know what I'm saying? So with Fox, he's gonna be the guy that's, guarding the opposing um teams teams handlers. And I think that's really valuable, with him also hopefully improving as a shooter. So it's kind of why I went Castle this year.
So I've got a question for you, because I
Good.
was I was looking at the position stuff, and so he played 69% of his minutes as shooting guard. In those minutes, San Antonio was minus 1.3 points worse than with him off the court at shooting guard. And they had like a pretty relatively above league average, like a 65th percentile offense. They barely turned the ball over because, again, Chris Paul was running the offense, but the defense wasn't great, right? It was 31st percentile. In the 29% of his minutes that he played point guard, they had a minus 6. They were minus 16 points worse. So this is with Chris Paul off the court. They had a bottom 10th percentile offense and a bottom 11th percentile defense. And I say those things with the caveat, of course, that he's a young player, and like when Chris Paul is Chris Paul, who's one of the most impactful players like in the league, because he's an adult, right? There's a
Yeah.
similar effect that we see with Risacher. So Risacher, you said that his role was pretty consistent, and it was, I'd say, up until DeAndre Hunter left. When
Yeah.
DeAndre Hunter left, it became, okay, what can we get more from Zach? Like, how can we lean into him as, the primary spacer, or the guy who's going to be taking a lot of these cutting looks or driving closeouts? And so he has a similar positional thing, right? So when he was at small forward, he was in about like the 50th percentile differential wise. So Atlanta was minus 1.7 points worse with him on versus off. But when he was at power forward, they were minus 8 points worse, right? So it's that same thing where you would think that, at 6'10", he'd be able to hold it down.
He's
But I
skinny though.
think he's skinny, he
Skinny.
doesn't have the strength. And so, the rim protection suffered a little bit. I want to say teams took more shots at the rim. Yeah, they actually took less shots at the rim with him on the floor at the 4, but they shot a good bit better. So about like plus 1.3% better in those minutes. So it's tough to, when you look at this from like a rookie's lens, because if you're relying on a rookie to shift your team, then you're in trouble, right? And so
Yeah.
for the Hawks, they were looking for just someone who could give them this baseline production. So I'll ask you that, like, because the other thing is, when you look at his numbers with Chris Paul versus without, I'll share it really quick, so the audience can see as well. This is what makes me wonder, like, what is the best way to use Castle, right? Because you would assume with Chris Paul off the floor that his scoring would spike, even if his efficiency suffered. But you didn't really see that. Now this is per 75 possessions, I believe. So this is a per rate basis, so it normalizes for the amount of time, right? He averaged 20 points with Chris on the floor per 75 possessions. His true shooting was, it was below league average, but it was, this is tenable. Like, you can do this. You see the jumps in the rim percentage and the 3-point percentage, mainly because a lot of his shots were assisted. But when Chris went off the floor, the efficiency wasn't necessarily there. And so, like when you watch him or when you think about like that within the context of his game, like do you view him as like the primary ball handler? Like, do you think that's where he'll be maximized long term?
Long term, yes. But as a
Mm.
rookie, this is perfect. Like him playing with Chris Paul, I think that he benefited so much from him. And I do think long term he could be the primary handler, but being a rookie point guard is so hard. Like I don't judge any point guard for like 3 years because it's like the efficiency, the turnovers, like that shit
Yeah.
happens. Like it's going to happen. Like Trey Young,
Hmm.
the first half of his rookies, I was like, oh my god, he's too small. He can't do anything. Like, dude, he's a rookie point guard and he's
Yeah.
he's tasked with everything. So I was so glad that Castle had Chris Paul to like take some of that off of him, and so he can just learn from Chris Paul. I think him being with Chris Paul, it it made him slightly more efficient because it's
Hmm.
Chris Paul. So I didn't hate that at all. I think having Chris Paul was great. And even though he was like, yeah, I'm trying to play the one, I think this was better for him as a player.
Yeah. It kind of lets him ease into it a little bit. And
Right.
so you can see, like, again, I'm not like we can look at Zach's numbers as well. Like Zach is also gonna have a worse points per possession, impact, without his best player on the floor because he's not equipped yet to carry the offense, right? But what I thought was interesting though is like he was able to at least the defense was something that was consistent with Zach, right? Like when he was on the floor outside of the lineup, so he shared it with Trey because I think like he didn't really like understand the nuances of switching and all that at the beginning.
Right.
The defense was at least to be like this is relative to league average. Like he was able to at least keep the defense, pretty consistent. But obviously the offense is going to suffer for anyone when your best playmaker goes off the floor, right? And you look at Zach's numbers without Trey, similar thing, right? Like you see the points are consistent, but you see how much more efficient Zach was with Trey off the floor. Like we're talking about a nearly plus 8% difference, right? Like that's the gap between being the worst shooter in the NBA, Josh Giddey 2024, versus being like a respectable, like this is someone we have to close out hard on. Like he shot 38% on the floor from the floor with Trey on the floor and 28% with him off. Right. So if we're gonna bring up these splits, I got to be consistent. I can't just put them out for Castle. Like I have to
That was
announce
up.
it for Risacher as well. And I think that this is why it's tough to use these types of stats when you're talking about rookies because they're going to be overly influenced by the offense they play within and the guys who get them their shots. I think for me, it really comes down to like when I watch Castle, I feel like, and we talked about this a little bit before, and I love your point about like the role sort of like malleability because he's done that throughout his career. Like we talked about a little bit, but like the college stuff, right? Like he comes to UConn as a highly recruited talent. He was the number one guy on his college team. He buys in. He was a garbage pill like Josh Hart type of guy, but he was also able to do some stuff on the ball. Was a great defender. I felt like his defense was a little bit like it wasn't as good as I expected. Looking at his numbers, he was like similar to the Zach. He contested a lot of shots. It wasn't necessarily like super impactful. So like we said when I talked about Zach's case, like opponent shot 3% better, 3 percentage points better with Zach contesting, and it was similar for Castle, but Zach had a better rim differential in terms of like he was above league average in terms of like rim deterrence, or like difference in like rim contest versus Castle, who was a little bit below league average. Makes sense again. 1 6 10, one isn't. Where I think he got beat out by Castle, like Castle was a little bit more prolific in terms of deflections, stop percentage, so taking charges, offensive fouls drawn. Like he was in the top 40 percentile for that. Where do you sort of rate his defense? And I know you mentioned the defense, but like how much of that factors in for you? Because I think for me, like if we're talking offensive players, like again, we talk a little bit more about like how their shot profiles are different. So um Castle took, we mentioned at the beginning, like, okay, Zach took about 20 true shot attempts. Castle's at 25.5. 8.7%, 8.7 of his 25.5, I'm sorry, were creation looks. So like that's in the 50th percentile in terms of true shooting percentage, and it's in the 83rd percentile in terms of creation. So he did a lot more for himself with the ball in the hands, with the ball in his hands than someone like Zach did. So like how much of like your evaluation for rookie year goes into, okay, this is the type of shots that he had to take or that he ended up taking versus like these are the type of shots that Zach took. And then also like how much does the defense factor in? Because I think like Zachary's efficiency outweighs the type of shot making that Castle had, at least in my opinion. But like how did that shake out for you?
Yeah, I think that's a big factor because rookies aren't supposed to be like efficient, and I give a lot of credit to that to Zach in that regard. But I think role does play a lot in it because you know, and this is also not to say if Castle was in Zach's place, like he's not a good shooter, so he's not gonna shoot. You know what I'm saying? But
Right.
I think role and what happens throughout the team season does play a lot. Defensively with Castle, I did think he was gonna be better. I did think he was gonna be better defensively this season, but per B-ball index, his perimeter isolation defense was phenomenal this season. He ranked in the 98th percentile, and I believe he was top 10 in that. He was either 10th or 11th in ISO defense this season. So, and also I think like when you lose the best defender in
Right.
the entire team is going to go down in that aspect. So, I don't really put too much on the defensive on-off shit because of like Victor's there. The whole team is like it's you know what I'm saying it skyrockets. But to your point, I thought he was going to be a little bit better defensively, like as a whole, because and I think that's again with the roles because at UConn, like he was the trash, he was a trash man. You know what I'm saying? He was doing a lot of other stuff, and I think with San Antonio, I think he did a lot more offensively than I thought he would. So given that, you know, and I'm not a guy that's like, oh, you're doing a lot on offense, you should not be playing. I'm the opposite of that, but I do give him a little bit of grace because you know he has the size, he has the smarts, he has the intensity, and per the stats, he has it in isolation. But I think just the offensive role that he had, the roles that he had, I think that plays a lot for me in terms of this rookie of the year award.
Yeah. I mean, you can see it just with the Wemby effect, you know. In the minutes he played without Wemby, I mean, Castle was a -10. And then the minutes he played with Wemby, you know, of course, great defender, but also has a ton of offensive value as well. Spurs were a +3. And that matters too. But I'll say like my final point, and like at one point, I have to see if I can find the actual graphic. At one point, Risacher was one of the worst shooters in the NBA. It was him, Sar, and Castle. And again, like no surprise, like
Rookies
are garbage at shooting. You know, they got to translate, right? And I think when I look at this list, so this list is created by Automatic NBA on Twitter. It's the worst 2024 or 2025 NBA shooters. It basically looks at like how many points added relative to league possession did you bring to your team as a shooter? And it looks at pull-up threes, catch and shoot threes, free throws, and long twos. So looking at this screenshot, like the only players who are worse on catch and shoot threes, we're talking about Scotty, Sar, Wendell, Bilal, Ron Holland, Keldon Johnson. Okay. And I think in overall, Castle was the second worst shooter in the NBA. And I don't think anyone expected him to come in and be like an extremely great shooter. And
but
I
that
think
is
the fact,
underwhelming.
right. But this is to me pretty scary, at least this early in his development. Because will he get better than this? I want to believe that. But at the same time, like his misses are like he has some really bad misses on tape. And he also just like I think his touch around the rim hasn't necessarily translated to outside. I think at his peak, he brings enough to offset this, but like I don't think he'll be like Josh Hart level bad. Like the way Josh Hart is being disrespected by the Pistons right now, I think that's a little bit further of an outcome for Castle because he has more on-ball juice. He's bigger. He's stronger.
Yeah.
He could play out the dunker spot a little bit more than Josh Hart can. And I also think he just brings more just on-ball juice in general. But this is something that's been in the back of my mind because I remember when Risacher was number 2 on this list. And so to see the fact that he was so good over the season that he made himself like no longer be considered. I don't remember where exactly he finished on this. I'd have to check the spreadsheet. But this is something that, at least for me, I've kept in the back of my mind. Not to dismiss like any of the points you said or like his overall case, but I think the fact that Risacher was efficient within his role and Stephon was generationally inefficient, again, with the caveat that most rookies are garbage, in that particular metric, I think that's what's been a differentiator for me. And I think that if Castle was more productive, I would give him grace. Like if he was averaging 17 or 18, then I'd give him grace. But I think, in the minutes that when you don't see this scoring ramp up without Chris Paul or without De'Aaron, I didn't feel like, I'd have to look at his games again, but I didn't feel like he like ripped off a ton of games when those guys went down. But I could be wrong though. Like I know you said that he finished strong, but I don't remember him like ripping off 20 or 30 balls. I'll have to check that. Do you remember that? Maybe I'm sure.
He did have a couple of them, especially with Victor out, and then when Fox was out with his injury, like his last 20 was 18, but I think it's like the last 5. So I'm like checking the O's without Fox. He averaged 20. He averaged just under 20 at 19.6. His assists jumped up to 7. So yeah, he's like of course without Victor, without Fox, he was scoring a little bit more, and his efficiency, although it ain't shit, it stayed the same. The last 20 games, he actually shot these exact same that he did for overall in the season. So, and he also shoots 72% from the line. So that's kind of encouraging that his shot isn't. Well, can I even say his shot not broken? But like, the shooting was very bad. But I think the fact that he was still able to be like impactful and for a lot of the season, like within the stuff that he does on the defense side of the ball, and still being able to find pockets to score in his rookie season as a bigger guard, I think that really encourages me. So
yeah, that's fair. I think for me, if he was 18-7 for the whole season, I'd be like, okay, you got it. But with your points about the role, the fact that that's what he looked like in a scaled up role, then that makes me feel okay. I can respect it. I think I would have wanted to see it for about 30 or 40 games instead of 20. But I think that's a fair case for sure. So who do you think it ends up going to? Like, do you think they're going to lean Castle on this one?
Yeah, I think the name with Castle will win over Risacher.
Once he got to the dunk contest, I was like, God damn it, bro. It was over, bro. I knew it because it's like, he didn't win it. No, McClung won.
Nah,
but like,
McClung won.
He was in the finals.
Well, he was in the finals, and he
played with
well.
Wemby, so they were on national television a ton. He had a couple of poster dunks, so I do think the aura moments. He has more aura moments as well. More nationally televised viewed moments. So, I'd hate to say that it'll go his way. I can check on what it's looking like right now, pulling up the tracker.
I think he might win that award favorably, honestly.
Yeah, right now he is favored heavy. So you have 31 first place votes for Stephon Castle. 3
fucking disgusting.
You got 3 for Jalen Wells, who we didn't talk about, but he was also really good.
Yeah, he's my third.
And then Risacher has 1 first place vote. So right now, right now it's Castle 161, Risacher 46, and then Wells 40.
I'm gonna wrap that up again.
So that probably will end up going Castle's way. I do think Zach Edey should have got some consideration too. He doesn't have any votes from what I can see, but I think he should have got some consideration. I'm trying to see who voted Risacher. Like Tim Bontemps from ESPN, and that's the only person who voted him for first overall. Kevin O'Connor, Hawks hater, has Risacher second. Fred Katz of the Athletic, Bill Simmons has Risacher second. So yeah, I mean, I mean, it is what it is. It's probably reps. But so I want to ask you about DPOY. you have a somewhat unconventional pick for DPOY. I think the I'm gonna say DPOY, the Draymond DPOY campaign is shameless. Like I think
Holy shit.
it's genuinely like one of the most irking things I've ever seen in NBA awards combos. Like I think even like the Embiid stuff, I could at least tolerate because it's the player like saying, okay, I am, like Draymond went on a podcast and then he spiked to be the favorite, which is beyond ridiculous to me. I think that, and I mentioned this to you before we started the show. There is a lack of ways to conceptualize what Dyson Daniels' defense does for a team. The idea of suppression isn't necessarily like a universal concept. In football, it is. Like shutdown corners are guys who are so good that quarterbacks are scared to throw the ball over there.
Yeah.
That's how good Dyson Daniels is at defense. And I can prove that with a clip I'm pulling up right now. He also was one of the best ISO defenders in the NBA. I know you cited Castle. He was Dyson actually was second.
Yeah.
In ISO defense. The only person better was Bam Adebayo, and like we all know how good. Yeah, we all know Bam. We all know what Bam can be on the defensive end. Now the Heat were not great defensively, but no one like when you switch against Bam, he's like one of the few bigs in the league where I'm like, please don't go against him, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not even gonna play the clip. This was the last possession of the playing game, right? Tyler Hero, who is the Heat's best offensive player, is standing in the backcourt with his hands on his hips. And when you run the clip, like I was like, there's no way they're gonna leave him there. Like I assumed like they're gonna do the Tatum thing, where Tatum starts in the backcourt and he runs off the screen. That's he doesn't move. Like they would rather keep Dyson out of the play.
Wow. Okay.
They'd rather keep Dyson out of the play entirely than have their best offensive player touch the ball.
Yeah, that shit right there.
And mind you, too, like this was with Hero hitting a couple tough baskets down the stretch. I was walking, like he wasn't, like he was getting to his spots, but it wasn't like easy shots. And he also did get away with a push off on one of them. But I think this spoke magnitudes about Dyson's defensive reputation and his ability. This is Spoelstra. Like this is like a universally recognized coach. He's like, I don't want anything to do with Dyson. I don't even want Dyson anywhere within the vicinity of the ball. And I think this spoke magnitudes about, like, obviously it's just one possession, but like I've seen teams do this. When we played Milwaukee, who like we destroyed them one game we played them, they didn't run any Dame Giannis pick and roll. They didn't have Dame bring the ball up the floor. It was straight off ball stuff. It was like they did everything in their power to keep Dyson away from the ball. And I think that is something that the statistics are going to have to catch up on. The idea of quantifying the value of a steal has to be more. I have to think of a way so I can push some more propaganda. But like when you steal the ball from a team or a player, like that's the highest and best offensive possession in basketball. Like I'll pull up the graphics so I can show everyone. Like there's no better possession offensively than when you're able to take the ball away from the offensive team, from the defense, for the team that you're defending against. And that's because usually it's a wide open layup, right? So we can look at the league average offensive rating by possession start type. This is one of my favorite graphics I've seen. It's created by Owen Phillips of the F5, right? So this x-axis right here is league points per 100 possessions below or above league average. So if it's in red, then this is like a worse than league average possession. And then if it's green, then it's higher than league average. You're basically averaging 2 points. You're adding almost 2 points per possession, about 1.7 points per possession with the live ball turnover. And nobody generated more live ball turnovers than Dyson Daniels. The only play that's even relatively close to impact is at the rim block. And a lot of that's because the defense is scrambled. It's the same effect.
You also get out in transition.
Dyson was one of the best players in the league at like converting transition looks into baskets. The Hawks were second in transition frequency. There was no way we were going to finish that good or that highly in transition frequency without him being on the team. I want to say over the last couple of years, the Hawks actually were like, you would think it's the same thing with Denver. Like Denver was not a super high transition team, even though they had, the Nikola Jokic. Like it was sort of like a no brainer. Like, why would you not want players who can get out and run for one of the best outlet classes in the NBA? It was something that the Hawks just did not do consistently. And I'll give you all the rating for the prior year. I think just the idea of just like how many possessions he saved the Hawks and how many possessions that he generated higher quality offensive possessions is just like, it's really hard to quantify that. And I can't even give you the number. But like, for example, the Hawks were 9th in transition frequency in 2023, 2024. Dyson had one of the with Dyson on the floor. I want to say we got out on transition on like um a little bit higher of a points per possession. The year prior, we were 14th in frequency. And again, like this was a team that you still have Trae Young on the roster. Like there was no reason for this team to not have guys running, getting up and down. It didn't make any sense. But now that so we had someone in Dejounte Murray who was also like a pretty good ball hawk, but he was not the type of guy who would like he wasn't as good with the ball in his hands. He didn't read the floor as well, so it wasn't as big of a difference. But with Dyson on the floor, he was in an 89th percentile in terms of like transition frequency added. So the Hawks got out on transition on like plus one, like almost 1.7% more of the time with him on the floor. And so I think that speaks to like defense is offense is defense and defense is offense, right? So the more turnovers you can create, the better you're going to be in the half court. The Hawks would not have finished. I think we finished like top 5 since like the trade deadline or something like that, maybe top 8. That's not happening without Dyson's defense. You can go back and forth about his value compared to a rim protector. And I think that's really the biggest case against him. Like, because even though he did lift our defense from like bottom 5 to 19th or 18th, you talk about someone like Evan Mobley, then it's like, okay, did he really have the same defensive impact as Evan Mobley? And I think without the understanding of how valuable Steele is on both ends, you can't really answer that question. But I know you didn't have Mobley. You had another player. So I'd love to hear your case.
On the Draymond shit, yeah, that shit was crazy because like before he started talking about it, nobody even considered him as defensive player of the year. So that was crazy. And yeah, but with Dyson, like, so my defensive player of the year was Houston Rocket guard Ford Amin Thompson, and I kind of compared him to Dyson, and yeah, Dyson was just like insane on the front of perimeter defending this season. Like you said, his perimeter ISO grade was 2.86 in the 100th percentile. He was second in that. Pickpocket rate was 97%. Steals per 75 possessions, 99 percentile. Deflections per 75, 99 percentile. But Amin Thompson, his matchup difficulty compared to Dyson's was 99 percentile. His was 96. His ISO perimeter grade was 1.89, which was in the 97 percentile. That was 18th. So where I got from that was like Dyson, of course, was better, but they're at least comparable in perimeter. Rim now interior is not a question. So I thought Amin was like you have Dyson, you have Mobley, and I thought Thompson was like a fuse between them. So rim defense, player shot 9.7% less at the rim against Thompson this season. His overall rim protection grade was 89 percentile. Block rate on contest 27.9%, which is in the 98 percentile. And now I can't really say this now because of what they just did, but the game in the regular season where he had against Curry and he like completely stopped Curry was like insane to me, and that's where I kind of started to switch over to him. He's also a great help defender also. So yeah, I talked about the matchup difficulty, ISO perm, great off ball chaser, which allowed him to stop Curry in that game. He was 93rd percentile in that. He's the only player in the NBA that's top 20 in blocks and and uh and uh and uh and uh and blocks and steals per game. And the last one that I had was opponent shot 10.6 shots per game of overall, right? On him. And all those shots, they shot 40.6%. That was second in the NBA. Second lowest. So in terms of on the perimeter, off ball chasing, in the paint, There was nobody I thought that was more impactful overall as a as a from everywhere
Mm-hmm.
on the court than Thompson.
Hmm. So I want to show this graphic that I have pulled up as well because it involves both of these guys. It's looking at the best point of attack defenders in the NBA, right? So the criteria is basically like how many drives per game. It's sorted by the drives per game stopped, right? So among every player in the NBA, like based on qualified players, I think it was based on like a certain amount of ISOs faced. Dyson had the most stops per game in the NBA. So if 6.1 stops per game. He matched up against a ball handler nearly 50% of the time. Only Nemhard and Katavius saw that more. His defensive impact was in the 50th, as it was a 86th percentile, and he played 34 minutes a night. But if you look at a man, like his defensive impact was on par with like Tumani, Derek White, um, and he saw a similar percentage of his minutes against ball handlers. He saw a little bit less ISOs than Dyson did, and his stops per game was pretty similar as well. And then his, I have to find the exact graphic. Oh, here it is, right here too. Like you mentioned, like top 20 in steals and blocks, right? So this is steals on this
Yeah,
side and this blocks on this side. You can see right in the middle
in the middle, yeah.
is Amen Thompson, right? So I
Yeah.
think, like to your point, like if Wembanyama's the best rim protector in the NBA and Dyson's the best perimeter defender, and with Wembanyama out, then it's like okay, we have to look at Mobley. Then who's in the middle? Then it's Amen Thompson. And so I definitely understand that argument. And so I want to ask you too, like I think that the only award that kind of like gets put in the context of help, like how much help you have, is MVP. Like people are constantly talking about, oh, well, Shea has more help than Jokic, or Jokic has no help, whatever it may be. In the context of like a defensive player of the year award, I think, among all the candidates, like Houston and Amen Thompson has the most defensive help. Does that factor in for you at all? Because I do think a lot of the contest stuff or the differential stuff is dependent on your team context, because I've watched Dyson fly around the court and try to like prevent guys, other people's guys from like taking shots because they they let blow-bys or they let someone go back door.
Yeah.
So like how much do you personally consider team context? Because I don't want to give Dyson necessarily a pass for like not having as good defensive context, but I imagine what he would look like on a team like Houston. And I imagine what he looked like on a team like OKC. And then like hopefully that's what the Hawks build to. But that is something that I keep in my head a little bit. But like how much do you think about like the context of these guys within their defense, not just their defensive roles, but like the infrastructure around
No, I think that matters a ton because
them?
like your advanced stuff looks a lot better if the guy's not
Facts.
scoring. Like even if you play great defense on a guy and like they like hit you with it, you know what I'm saying? They
Mhm.
that goes on you. So yeah, no, I think that plays a factor. But I just think a man was just so good in everything that like he's the best defender on that team. So,
Yep.
like, if he was like the third best defender on a great defensive team, that may be something else. But he's the best defender on one of the best defensive teams, and um, and I also don't think like Fred's a feisty, you know what I'm saying? But like Fred, Jalen Green, I don't think they have too many on ball defenders. Like Tari is amazing. Dylan
Mhm.
Brooks is too, but like if there's a guy that needs to be stopped, they're putting Thompson on him, not
Yep.
Tari Eason or anybody else. So, like, yes, that 100% plays a factor because also if Thompson ends up getting blown by and like somebody helps him, that helps him.
Yeah.
But I just think that him being the best defender on that team and him being the guy that's guarding the best the 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 off the offensive player a lot of times again he was in the 96th percentile in matchup difficulty this season. Of course I think the teammates help, but he's still being the the top one. So it does play a factor, but in terms of Amin Thompson, I didn't weigh it too heavily.
Mm. Yeah, I think I wanted to point this out too. This is when Amen became a starter for the first time. he was leading the league in miles covered per game. And I think he's tasked with a lot more defensively than you would imagine. Yes, it's a great defensive context, but he's constantly rotating. The Rockets don't believe in sending help, but they do send a ton of, like, you see how much distance he's covering offensively. I think he moves a lot more offensively than like most defensive specialists do. You know, like he's switching dunker spots, or he's in a short roll, whatever it may be. So I think he's like, and we had this discussion in one of my group chats. Like there are all-time great perimeter defenders, and then there's like aliens. And the Thompson twins are like Viltrumites, but they're like conquest, and then Dyson's like invincible, because there's just a level of physical gifts that just Dyson will never unlock. But he makes up, at least in my opinion, like I don't think a man will ever have the timing that Dyson does defensively.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think he does have some of the court mapping. I don't think he has, but he does have great like at the rim timing.
Yeah,
I don't know if he has the same like 2K rip. Like I can time this person's steps up. I think that stuff is not as accessible for someone like a man, but it doesn't matter when you're that level of athlete. Like, just if you look up at any Amen Thompson reel, like probably the first one might be the one where he speed boosted down the court.
Yeah.
Or when he went at Tyler Hero with the in and out, and you see the power and the fluidity, and that's everything he could do on just what he could do on the offensive end, he could do on the defense as well. So I do think there's an element of like, this dude can literally do anything he wants, and he can cover multiple positions. Let's see. I'm checking what the tracker has for right now. So currently, Evan Mobley is leading in Defensive Player of the Year. He has 16 first place votes. Dyson has 9. Draymond has 5. And then Amen has 2. And then Lou Dort has 4. So right now it's Evan Mobley, Dyson Daniels, Draymond Green. Mobley's leading by almost 50 points. Dyson and Draymond are separated by 6. And then Amen. Then it's Lou Dort, and then it's Amen 5th. I think the voters are getting this wrong in terms of the distribution of votes. Like, I think I would spread out the Draymond votes to Dyson and Amen. And I think that Mobley, I don't know if Mobley should have that much separation, at least in my opinion. What did you think about his season defensively?
Because I think that it kind of tailed off towards the end.
No, for sure.
Like,
yeah, definitely.
The beginning of the season, hell yeah, it was emo. Like I was cool with that shit. But like I'm also cool with, like, it's fine. But like the Draymond stuff is like insane to me, honestly. Like, there was no case for Draymond before he said I'm the defense player. That there was no case for it, and it still isn't. Look, it's like, yeah, he's one of the best defenders of all time. Like, you're not gonna hear me say anything other than that. But this season, he shouldn't even, like. Why is he up there? But there's no Tumani. That, like, how does that even work? Like, I don't know. But well, probably because Portland's a horrible like, it's not a good defense team, even though they picked it up at the end of the season. But yeah, I don't know. I just I thought, well, Evan had a great defensive year. I just think that at the tail end, as the Cavs, kind of slid down the defensive rankings a little slightly. I just thought man was the perfect fuse of guarding on the perimeter and on the inside. And that's just where I went. And yeah, I don't mind Emo. He was actually he wasn't. He was my 3. I had Dyson 2, and I had Emo 3. But as we were live, 6 Man of the Year was decided, and of course, my boy Payne Pritchard won that. But
really,
yeah.
Oh wow.
So yeah, but I don't mind Emo. I think he had a great defensive season. It was just like the second half of the season, I didn't really see it. You know what I'm saying? But with the Draymond shit, it's insane. But I wouldn't mind Evan if you wanted.
Yeah, I don't play for dunks and threes anymore, so I can't pull up the like overtime stuff. But we can just look at their EPMs right now, just to give a baseline. So, Wembanyama was probably gonna win this award. He was 4th in defensive estimated plus minus. Behind him, Amen Thompson. Then you have Draymond, who again had a great defensive season, but it's just like, I think they've also, when you watch the way they played against the Rockets, like, him and Jimmy Butler is a crazy duo. So I think that's definitely helped him a lot. And then you have Dyson, who again played in the weakest content, so 5, 6, 7, 8. Dyson was 10th in defensive estimated plus minus, and I think that's nothing to sneeze at. Again, considering what he was tasked with, and then you'd have to score down to find guys like I just realized Mobley is like
where's Emo?
I don't even know where he is.
I just seen him
Mister.
Seen him. Right there.
Blind?
Over Matisse. Up some more.
I see him now. Okay. Yeah, so you'd see Mobley's, probably 25-ish, something like that.
So is that the like trying to quantify like rim protect? Well, I guess not because Victor's up there. But I mean, he's an insane rim protector. Like so, but Chet's up there. J Dub had a great rim protecting season. So like out of all these guys, there's only Victor, I guess. Oh, John, I don't know. So there's Victor, Chet, Zubac.
I'd say Isaac too. Isaac and Zubac.
I was okay. So there's 5 primary rim protectors. Chris Dunn was really good. I'm not saying he should be DPOY, but he had an insane season. But does that go to some of the like quantifying like rim protection versus like steals type shit? Well, actually, Caruso, because we talked about Dyson in terms of like deflections and shit. Caruso was either top or 2 in a lot of that stuff.
He averaged more per 75, but Dyson had more total ones. But like depending on the metric, like for example, like Darko, like really gives bigs a lot more credit defensively.
Right.
Like if you look at Darko's rankings, like their top 10 is all bigs, including guys like Nurkic and Jakob Poeltl. And then you look at EPM, you see more like I guess like distribution of defensive excellence, right? Like you see more guards and wings. And looking at Evans' numbers, I mean, he was in the 75th percentile in rim defensive field goal attempts. Team shot 9% worse at the rim when he contested, which is insane.
Who's that?
This is Mobley.
That's the same as Thompson.
Yeah. I think, but when you look at the overall context for Cleveland, I think they finished the season 8th in defensive rating, but they like over the last 2 weeks, they were 12th. So like you saw a bit of a drop off from them. There was a little bit of a trend of them, like, understandably so, they locked up the number 1 seed. It's like, okay, do we have to compete as much? I do think he took his foot off the gas. It doesn't seem like that's affected the voting though. So I expect him to take DPOY. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good conversation. I think out of these guys though, like I think Amen is like the least replaceable in terms of like, or I'd say like Amen and Dyson are like phenoms. And I think you can find guys who impact the rim a little bit more than you can find like these super switchable defenders or these like incredibly disruptive guys. So I think like that's what those archetypes I feel like are more, because they're rarer, they feel more valuable, because I feel like you can almost get, I don't want to say any 7-footer and be solid as a rim protector, because that's not exactly true. But like Steven Adams isn't the athletic beast that like Evan Mobley is, but just by virtue of his size, he brings a similar amount of rim protection. Like the guys who played big minutes and were leading the league and rim defensive field goal percentage, like the difference was like Daniel Gafford was number 1. Then you got Anthony Davis, you've got Nicholas Batum, strangely, Porzingis.
Yo. I said that team shot 40.6% on him, and that was the second lowest. The first lowest was fucking Batum, bro. I don't know what he been doing, but he been locking some shit up. But yeah.
He plays a lot next to Zubac. And then you also have Caruso was team shot or opponent shot 7% worse with him at the rim as well. So that's also probably why it's driving his defensive estimated plus minus. But he only played 1,000 minutes. Dorian Finney-Smith had really good numbers. So like it can kind of be across the board. Like sometimes like I feel like it's not as repeatable. Modest had really good numbers here. Isaiah Stewart.
Yeah, Modest,
Scotty Barnes, like not names that you'd immediately think of. DeMontis for some reason. But yeah, I think the defensive player of the year conversation, like, do you think it's time to break it out in positions and say, okay, here's the best defensive guard, here's the best defensive big, or do you think it should remain, just one guy gets it? Because I feel like, in my opinion, the roles are just so different, man. Like,
Yeah.
there's like Evan is not asked to do what Dyson does, and neither is Mobley, or like there's just this. It's an entirely different game to play defense as a big versus a guard. So, and I know you have, maybe you defend the Marcus Smart DPOY, I don't know, but like I feel like that also set guards back a little bit because he wasn't the best defender on that team, but they couldn't give it to Robert Williams. So
man, that shit hurt my heart to this day, bro. Like Rob, I'm the biggest Rob fan you ever meet, bro. Like I might say this might sound that's my favorite player of all time. Like I swear to God, like
really,
that season he had that shit locked up, bro. And then he got hurt, so they were just like, all right, let's give it to the next best on the best team. So like that second half of the season, defensively was dead ass all time. Was dead ass all time. Ime switched Rob from guarding fives to the team's worst shooter.
He was one of the first coaches to do that, man.
He just turned into an alien, bro. And Rob just turned into an alien, bro. So I don't want to talk about this shit. I'm gonna be all night. But to your you was I do like the idea of splitting up, but I think they should keep it they should keep it that way. But it is super hard to like compare. You know what I'm saying? And that's part of the reason why I went Thompson, because you have a perimeter and a you have Dyson, you have Dort, you have Kamar, you have Caruso, and then the guys that are on the inside like Emo, Gobert, a lot of times, and the perfect guy between that was Thompson. So that's what I did. And to your point about of course this guy isn't Emo, of course, but you were like you can sometimes just plug a 7-footer inside, and you could be kind of cool defensively. Can I share my screen?
You might be able to. If not, you can send it to me.
Luke Cornett, right, is a guy
that's good
I've
call
grown
out.
to love, right? Per B-ball index, rim protection 3.25, 99 percentile, right? Rim contest per 75 possessions, he had 9 of those at the 95th percentile. Let me see, rim deterrence 97 percentile. Rim defensive field goal percentage versus expected negative 11.9%. Like like Luke, this might just go to his point as him just being like crazy this year, but again, to your point, why like it's a lot easier to find this type of guy than a guy like Dyson, who like off the ball, his instincts in the pass lanes are just insane. Like there are plays where he's not even like there's a guy here and he's just like doing like this, and then he flies and switches. Like it was insane. And then you have a guy like Thompson who can do both of those things.
Yep.
So to your point, like Emo, you're not probably not gonna find a defender like him or like a Bam, but there are low volume guys in this league that can do some of those same things. I don't think there's a low volume guy that's doing what Thompson or Dyson's doing as far as like deflections and all that stuff. So dude, Cornette had an insane season on the interior. Holy shit. Help defensive talent, 99 percentile. Like he was insane. But yeah, so just to go to that point a little bit. But yeah, I wouldn't mind the split, but I think they just keep it one because that's just like I guess it means more to
it might be time for a defensive third team as well.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that though.
Because like there's such a long list of great defenders that I feel like guys are gonna get squeezed out.
Do you have your teams? Your all defense team?
I haven't done them like in entirety, but I can give you like an idea of who I'd have.
Because on my first, I have Amin, Dyson, Draymond, Emo, Ludort. 2 was J Dub, Jaren, Zoo, Rudy, and Kamara.
So I think I would probably keep it the same 4. I would put J-Dub over Dort. I'm not gonna lie, like maybe it's just what I'm seeing in the playoffs, but Jaren is
Hey,
dog.
yo,
He's
yo.
he's really disappointing me, man. Like, and I don't expect a ton from him. You know what I mean? Like, I just block shots. I think the fact that he can't rebound, the fact that he's so disinterested off the ball. Also, Memphis was sneakily bad after I'll pull up the numbers as I'm speaking, but they were a top 5 defense before January 1st. And I'll tell you one thing about Memphis, schematically, they allowed the 3rd most threes, wide open threes in the NBA, but their opponents were shooting the 3rd worst percentage. So it was insane shooting luck. After the January 1st, when the teams were like, oh wait, like we have a ton of threes and you're just gonna let us have them. That defense was nowhere near as good. Like they finished 10th. The last 2 weeks they were at 13th. But I think when they lost Marcus Smart, and I think that team just kind of had bad vibes in general, man, because they ended up after the first. This was the 19th defense. Like Atlanta was 21st, Denver was 20th. Like I can't in good faith give it to Jaren because I'm like, you're supposed to be the DPOY. I need more of a defensive impact from you. And I don't know what his on-off numbers look like, but I felt like that team in particular like really lost their mojo, and I think it's up to someone like Jaren to set the tone defensively. His on-court defensive rating was plus 2.9. His on-off was plus 2.4, so it's not his fault. But I thought he really needed Edie out there, and
because he can't close a possession.
He can't close a possession, and he hunts foul, and he gets fouls, and he hunts blocks. And so, personally, I would probably take him off, and I would have Chris Dunn. So I'd have my first team. I'd have Amen, Dyson, Draymond, Mobley, J-Dub, and then I'd have Dort, Chris Dunn, Zubac, Rudy, and then Kamara. It's probably what I would end up doing. I'm trying to think if I'm missing anyone. I might put I don't know if Asar is eligible. I don't think he is, but I would have had Asar over who would I probably had I don't know if it'd be Rudy, but I would have had to have fit Asar in there somewhere because I think he's been insane as well. He just doesn't get as much usage.
But we need a 13.
Exactly. So like
that's why I brought that up because we just need a 13.
The other guys like who I think I'm getting squeezed out. I think Derek White, anyone from the Magic, Tari Eason. Yeah. The fact that like no Magic players would be on the all defensive team is kind of crazy. Like I think you can make a case for Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. You can make a case for a number of guys. Andrew Nembhard has had a crazy defensive season. He's like on par with Dyson in terms of matchup difficulty and ISO effectiveness. He should have been there. Jared Allen has a case. Bam always has somewhat of a case, but I want to give it to him this year. You could definitely, Drew Holiday always has a case. Kason, probably Jaden McDaniels. Like there were guys that like you could legitimately bring out a great third team, and you'd be like, these guys aren't worthy of being snubs. They're worthy of being on the team.
I'm not sure how like he's done this season, but like in terms of like the on-off stuff in the advance, but like Giannis is usually always on these teams. I didn't even name him, so I'm not sure. But
no, that's a good call out. I don't think he's like Milwaukee hasn't been great. His numbers are actually kind of like they're plus 1.4 points better defensively with him on the floor, but he has just a plus 0.4 on-off rating. So like. I think this has been his best offensive season, but it's come with some defensive stuff. Also, it's Brook Lopez being, not moving well.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I appreciate you taking the time, man. I could keep going about this all day. Like, I love defense. I love that defense is back in Atlanta, man. Like, I've been working on the Dyson Daniels video because he legitimately has changed our lives, bro. Like, I think when we talked about the Boston game, like, we won games against y'all based off defense. Bro, you would have told me that 2 years ago, I would have been like, man, get out of my face. Like, this is no way. But he has, in a way that you can't quantify, change the way this defense plays, change the way this team has played. So I don't think he'll get the Defensive Player of the Year award. It's actually honestly good from us from a selfish perspective because his contract extension would be a lot more expensive if he gets DPOY. There's nothing attached to MIP. So, hey, man, get the MIP, you know what I mean? But the DPOY probably, is not in the Hawks' best interest. But, yeah, I want to go ahead and wrap up, man. I just want to say I appreciate you taking the time. And definitely let people know where they can find you, man. You're doing great work during the playoffs, and I want to make sure they're tapped there.
For sure, brother. Appreciate you. I'm at Nick NBA on YouTube. My Twitter is _ King Nick. So those are the two places I'm mainly at. My YouTube is mainly Celtic stuff, but I do a lot of like player stuff. Speaking of that, the game that y'all beat us in a play-in at our house, like Dyson was so good. I did a video on him. So it was like, yeah, he is like, I think he because he was also scoring in that game too. I think he had like 26 or something like that, and he had like 5 steals. So he was just crazy into that game. So yeah, YouTube Nick NBA, Twitter _ King Nick. That's where I spend most of my time.
Sounds good, bro. I appreciate you. Y'all make sure you follow him. All this stuff will be in the description, and then we'll be moving on to the next segment where we talk about a little bit about the Heat game, and then we'll wrap up.
Hero waits. He The big knock away, and Okongwu has got the steal. Okongwu to the rim for two. Here. Waits. He draws.
And confident and comfortable playing along other accomplished players.
Hawks have looked disjointed. They're down 12-2. Shot clock is down to 7.
And
Hawks have looked disjointed. They're down 12. Hawks have looked disjointed. They're down 12-2. Shot clock is down to 7. The jumper doesn't. The jumper doesn't go for Risacher. Follow. It's playing time.
That's right, baby. You got to be fired up, ready to roll.
19-12. Mitchell. Fend off at 12. Mitchell. 12. Mitchell. Fend off. And the help by Risacher.
Baby, you got to be fired up, ready to roll.
19-12. Mitchell. Fend off. And the help by Risacher.
This is a different Heat team, not your typical 10 seed because of all the transition and the growth of some of their young guys.
Floated up. Adebayo. Couple of punts.
Not your typical 10 seed because of all the transition and the growth of some of their young guys.
Floated up. Adebayo. Couple of pumps. Denied.
For the vets that came in that first half and made a difference, but specifically they want to get Trae Young going on the offensive end. More screen and roll for the vet.
Young, lob it. Young, lob it. And Gay missed on the stuff. Mitchell to Robinson. He's ready to shoot it, but the rainbow delivery doesn't go on the stuff. Mitchell to Robinson. He's ready to shoot it, but the rainbow. Gay the catch. Gay the Gay the catch. Whips it to
with that when he had a point blank, I'm going to take advantage.
Hawks average 15 and a half turnovers per game this season. Miami getting good look after good look. Good look, and Adebayo converts. It's a 10-point lead for the Heat. Young switching hands to the left.
For the Heat, real rim protection, and Adebayo got caught.
To meet the number one seed in the East, Cleveland. Inside out to Robinson. Return it. Mitchell penetrates. Inside out to Robinson. Return it. Mitchell penetrates. Return it. Missed it on the interior. Hero, the stutter step, and could not finish with the left. Krejci ahead. It finally gets to LeVert. Off the dribble, the stutter step, and could not finish with the left. Krejci ahead. It finally gets to LeVert. Off the dribble drive, and he floats it in. +1. Harris, Cleveland, and now Atlanta. Hero. Atlanta. Now Atlanta. Hero. Drive. Atlanta. Hero. Drive, kick. The Highsmith J is good. A high arcer for Haywood. 12-second difference. Shot clock to game clock. Hero takes the lane. 12-second difference. 12-second difference. Shot clock to game clock. Hero takes the lane and finishes.
Yeah, that was a much harder layup attempt there.
The 7'2" wingspan of Onyeka Okongwu, the 24-year-old from Los Angeles. Kick it. 7'2" wingspan of Onyeka Okongwu, the 24-year-old from Los Angeles. Kick it. Corner, Burke, denied! The extension by Gay. Eight-point game. Okongwu.
really allows you to kind of exhale if you're the Heat who have been struggling here offensively.
And Young misses.
Offensively.
And Young misses on the floater.
It really allows you to kind of exhale if you're the Heat. It really allows
Right smack in the middle of it for the Heat.
he just has an impact on winning.
Heat. Smack in the middle of it for the Heat.
He just has an impact on winning.
Right smack in the middle of it for the Heat.
Really not there here in this game.
Yeah, he's searching right now. Wiggins loses his foot. Hit the deck and the save. Hit the deck and the save. By the Hawks. Jumper doesn't go. Risacher. And the save, but by the deck and the save by the Hawks. Jumper doesn't go. Risacher. Jumper doesn't go. Jumper doesn't go. Risacher. Miami up by 11. LeVert using the Okongwu screen. LeVert screen. That was your lob to me. I didn't take a cut at it. Okongwu flips it in to me. I didn't take a cut at it. Okongwu flips it in. LeVert, man, and Okongwu on the floor. Okongwu is going to shoot the three and cans it. For Mitchell. Highsmith near for Mitchell. For Mitchell. Highsmith nearly lost it. Anderson, a grenade is good. A grenade is good. Defense from Mitchell. Under a minute to go in the third. Niang will hoist and hit the three. Body from Niang. Robinson, shot clock winding down. Anderson just made one another. Yes, sir. Anderson just made one another. Yes, sir. defense, swinging. Hero. Tight defense, swing it. Wiggins, 7 to shoot. Spin. Wiggins banks it. Hero. Tight defense, swing it. Wiggins, 7 to shoot. Spin. Wiggins banks it home.
Eric Spoelstra for the Heat before the game. He talked about that losing streak that they suffered during the season and how much they learned from that. Eric Spoelstra for the Heat before the game. He talked about that losing streak that they suffered during the season and how much they Spoelstra for the Heat before Eric Spoelstra for the Heat before the game. He talked about that losing streak that they suffered during the season and how much they learned they suffered during the season and how much they learned from that. He'd had a great game and then they had a bad skid. Can they survive that here in the fourth quarter?
Highsmith 3.
They survive that here in the fourth quarter.
Highsmith 3 doesn't go. Hero's got a screen from Highsmith. Adebayo, he's got it.
And that's one. Looks like they've gone to a little bit of a zone, Miami, here on this possession.
Man, feed it. LeVert, get it back. 6 to shoot. Okongwu, catch it!
They've gone to a little bit of a zone, Miami, here on this possession.
Man, feed it. LeVert, get it back. 6 to shoot. Okongwu, catch it! Off 3! Points. 23 points. Onyeka Okongwu, steal by Daniels. Look out! Okongwu on the rock attack. Right now, Atlanta has seized momentum, but Mitchell can. Daniels, fake floater, short. Rebound, claimed by Wiggins. Mitchell handling the point guard duties. He's going to drive on LeVert. He's going to drive on LeVert, create space. LeVert. Hawks come the other way. Kick. Young. Okongwu. Another. No. And Adebayo kicks it out. Hero. Shot clock down to 4. Kicks it. Kicks it out. Hero. Shot clock down to 4. Clock down to 4. Hero. Shot clock down to 4. Hero. Bullseye. Winner earns the 8th seed. Will take on number 1 Cleveland in the East. The loser goes to Cancun. High archer, LeVert. Hero screen out of bio. Hero pull up. It's good. Hero screen out of bio. Hero pull up. It's good.
The last few possessions, can Trey get going?
Blocked by Adam.
The last few possessions, can Trey get going?
Blocked by Adam Bio. He came out of nowhere. And Hero will take it in, but miss it.
The last few possessions, can
But miss it.
the last few possessions, can
99-98. 99-98. Niang off the mark.
the net.
Hero drives, kicks. Highsmith in and out. Oh, excuse me. Hero drives, kicks. Highsmith in and out. Oh! Hero drives, kicks. Highsmith in and out. Oh! Drives, kicks. Highsmith in and out. Oh, excuse me. Highsmith in and out. Oh, excuse me.
On that second shot opportunity.
It's a 9-0 run. Miami up by 3. Knee.
On that second shot opportunity.
It's a 9-0 run. Miami up by 3. Niang. Skill. 101-100. Heat. Hero. Cross. Over. Hero. Step back. Yes. Niang. Swing. Daniels. A minute and a half to go. Minute and a half to go. 3-point lead for Miami. Inside, Daniels puts it down to cut it to 1. Highsmith bounces out of bio. Highsmith bounces out of bio. Shot clock down to 2, down to 1. Out of bio, knock away. Oh! 2, down to 1. Down to 1. Out of bio, knock away. Oh, it ends up. Oh. Shot clock down to 2, down to 1. Out of bio, knock away. Oh, it ends up underneath for Highsmith. 1, out of bio, knock. Defender goes down. Daniels to Young. 3-point lead for Miami. Young gets it down. Daniels to Young. 3-point lead for Miami. Young gets inside and lays it in. 105-104 Heat. 42 seconds to go. Hero, pull up, short, knocked up in the 105-104 Heat. 42 seconds. 42 seconds to go. Hero, pull up, short, knocked up in the.
They don't call a timeout so that Miami can set their defense. Does it pay off?
Niang, spin.
Pay off.
Niang, spin. Fake, short, rebounded by. Winner gets the 8 seed. Get it in for Young. 4 seconds left. Young makes his move. Seconds left. Young makes his move. Seconds left. Young makes his move. Drives in. Ties. 4 seconds left. Young makes his move. Drives in. Makes his move. Drives in. Ties the game. 1.3 left. Anderson looking. Turn around. No good. Trae Young, clutch bucket to tie the game. Trae Young, clutch bucket to tie the game in regulation. Wiggins, spin into the rim, he flips it up, no good, popped up in the air.
And allow LeVert, who brought some size and maybe do a better job on that contest, and force the miss.
Young.
Enforce the miss.
Young, no look, but the problem was man wasn't looking either.
Test, enforce the miss.
Young.
Miss.
Young.
Enforce the miss. Force the miss.
Mitchell using the Adebayo screen. Kicks it out. Highsmith for Hero. Bottom. It's a three. Mitchell using the Adebayo screen. Kicks it out. Highsmith for Hero. Adebayo screen. Kicks it out. Kicks it out. 27 for Tyler Hero. Young floats it up and in. Davion Mitchell, formerly of the Sacramento Kings and Toronto Raptors, lines it up. He hits a three.
He has really been a tone setter for the Heat.
112 to 108. To the big Okongwu. 7 to shoot. Hero open a shoot. Hero. Mitchell. Again! Davion.
He has been electric here on the road.
And Mitchell is taken down. And here's Wiggins, picked up by Okongwu. 8 to shoot. Wiggins wants to dance. The float. 117 to 108. 2:34 to go in OT. Daniels swing it. They need it. Okongwu, they count it. It's a three. Got 2 minutes to 2:12 left on the clock. Davion Mitchell to Adebayo. Flip, no. Davion Mitchell to Adebayo. Flip, no. Rebounded by. Got 2 minutes to play. Young goes to work. Pulls it back. Got him! It's
So many momentum changes.
1-7. 17 to 114. 117 to 114. Miami. Hero on target is 6. Daniels one-on-one. Spin over Wiggins. Doesn't go. Cleared by. Cleared by LeVert. Okongwu the hard drive. That won't go. Rebound knocked around. Young digging for it. Okongwu extends for it, and Atlanta's got it. Okongwu extends for it, and Atlanta's got it. LeVert. Pump fake. He's been the man in overtime. Shot clock down to 4. Mitchell, step back. Up. Down to 4. Mitchell, step back. Off the rim. Mitchell gets in there and saves it. To crush the Hawks. Hero ball fake. Crush the Hawks. Hero ball to crush the Hawks. Hero ball fake. Shot clock winding down. Mitchell, jumper. Oh, yeah!